Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast, the moment that you've all been waiting for tonight. So this podcast is called Curious Conversations with Lala. So thank you for watching and tuning in. We are going to kick things off a little bit differently. We're going to have a guest speaker tonight, but we do have a change of plans. And don't worry, that guest speaker is going to be making an appearance, just not tonight as we thought. So the thing about life is sometimes you have to improvise and just kind of go with the flow. So tonight, I want to introduce you all to my boyfriend, Gregory Lee, over here. He has done a lot of work behind this podcast. He has just been so sweet and understanding. When I have a vision for things, I can sometimes change my mind and I can be all over the place, but he's been very patient with me. So I'm very thankful for you, babe. Just understanding that this girl just wanted to get it perfect and get it right. I also want to give a shout out to my cousin Leon for making the song for me and just being the vocals on this. Like, man, it's so amazing. I did send a little or show a little snippet of it on social media. So if you follow me on TikTok, it's there. Put a little teaser out on Snapchat and on Curious Conversations with Lala on the Facebook official Facebook page. So if you haven't, you'll have to check it out. Um, some of you may be wondering why I wanted to start a podcast. Well, there's just so much to talk about. You can just never run out of things to talk about, right? There's certain subjects that just really touch my heart in different ways. One of those are, children with disabilities. I have a son that was born at 23 weeks and spent 11 months of 11 months of his life in the hospital. And so going through that, has created, strength in me that I never thought I would have before. And he's just an inspirational kid. And I just feel like I can do anything. I'm like, if he could go through something traumatic like that, I can be his, the pillar and, carry that torch for him. So that's kind of what started it all. Also just being a crime junkie too. I think I started watching like all the crazy crime shows like Forensic Files, Snapped, Oxygen. I mean, other kids were outside playing. I was like, no, I gotta watch Forensic Files, enjoying life, right? Just staying in a child's place. And here I am, like, no, I gotta watch Forensic Files. Like, it was so interesting to me, to the point where I took forensics in high school. That class was like a breeze because I was such a big nerd. The teacher would be like, hey, who wants to talk about Jeffrey Dahmer? And I'm like, oh yeah, he was born in Wisconsin. And I would just start shotgunning facts out about him. He's like, how do you know this? Like most kids like aren't even thinking about serial killers and things like that. But it always interests me how the mind worked. So then I took up psychology in college, and criminal justice was my minor. So um, that's never gone away. Um, I'm also just an advocate for people with missing persons, cases and things like that. There's been a couple cases that have been real close to home. So that's kind of motivated me to be that voice. As you all know, there are certain people that are in the limelight with these cases because you can't cover everything, right? So a lot of people's voices, kind of get muted in the media if they're not really well known. People of color aren't always, broadcasted, or indigenous folks. So definitely want to be that voice for them as well, and everybody for that matter. But just to talk about, the whys and the whats, that's kind of some of the inspo. And then social acts are what we're going to be talking about on this podcast. um, just people, that are struggling with mental health. I think that's super important. So that was some inspo behind that. Relationships, just some of everything. So me and Greg are just gonna kick it off tonight about us and our journey and our walk of life, and I'm hoping that it can inspire somebody else out here watching it tonight. Sorry, I've been rambling. I kind of just, took the show. He's like, it's your show. But anyways, Greg and I actually met back in 2020 at the height of COVID. It was crazy. Um, how did it go? So this is what happened. I'm like, how did we meet? There's a little app called Hinge, not Tinder. Nah, we were done with Tinder, but got on Hinge. I think he slid up first. He definitely did. He said, "Hey, what's up?" And you did.
I think that
And
sliding was
I call it sliding up in the DMs, but yeah, you definitely came through in the DMs. He said, "Hey, what's up?" And that sparked up a conversation. Now, at the time, it did. It did. He looking
you said,
confused,
"Hey,
like,
what's up?" I don't know if I said, "Hey, what's
I
up,"
think you
but
said,
I said,
"Hey." He said something.
"Yeah, probably."
You
We
said
have to
you
go
said,
back and
"Hey,"
look.
something like that. But anyways, we're here today, right? And then from there, at the time I was a single mom of a 3 month old. I know I'm crazy, right? A single mom finds love, and her son's in the hospital, and all those things. So, like I said, he was born extremely early. He was around 3 months old when Greg came into my life, and at the time I was working for MetLife. Little did I know that what now. I want you to say the other part because like the irony in our story is crazy. So,
Which part?
so I was working for MetLife, and what happened?
Um, sorry, I'm trying.
You were in. You were.
The
He was insured.
Oh
Little.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Little did I
yeah.
know.
I had MetLife as a policy on the car, and I don't know at what point we found out that, I mean, obviously knowing that you work for MetLife, but in auto insurance, and
Hmm.
then me having auto insurance through MetLife, but then me um, also being involved in a situation that I had to call MetLife, ultimately call MetLife about. So um, just sort of a weird, maybe coincidental story, I guess, along the way that, sometimes you just go back and just say, wow, that's really, we've had a lot of moments like that, honestly.
Hmm.
But this situation was probably one of the first as to where, like, you know, um, I don't know if I should even go into the story, but um, driving and stopped at a red light. There's maybe a few cars in front of me, and to my left, there's something happening that, it's just you you don't even really think about. You're just going about your day, and then all of a sudden you're in your car, you're stopped, and then there's people um, essentially shooting, and you can see them from just I turned to the left and I saw, and there were two guys, and the one guy that was shooting, there was one guy running, one guy that was shooting, he shot, and the bullet actually hit the driver's side door,
Hmm.
and that um, about the grace of God, I'm very thankful that the bullet didn't um, go through the door entirely, because if it did, it probably would have ended up hitting, somewhere on my side, or something like that. So um, I was very thankful for that, and uh, after the fact, I ended up calling the insurance company just because I know how insurance companies are. I just wanted to document the incident, because somebody like myself, I've been in situations before where those people try to link you to certain things, right?
Hmm.
So I didn't want anyone to come back and say, "Oh well, we see this." these shots in your car and, shooting just, like something crazy. And it's happened to me and my older brother before where um, things happen with the car and then the police try to say, oh, well, but does something happen that it didn't happen? And we're like, no, we have it documented with the insurance company that this is something linked to an entirely different situation. And so just getting it on file. But in doing that, I remember talking to the guy, just telling him, I forget his name, but he obviously worked for MetLife, and there wasn't anything they could really do about it because the coverage wasn't really coverage. Honestly, it was just they couldn't really do anything about it. So we just put it on file, called them, and then obviously
That's when I come
so
in.
I've been behind the scenes. I'm not knowing that after that happened, the guy that took my call, he went back and told maybe a few coworkers. One of those coworkers up being Lakanka, and
Well, kind of how it happened was, again, I didn't know Greg at the time when he had this claim, but I do vaguely remember I was in training in the office, and one of the guys was like, "Hey, you got to get over here! Oh my gosh, this guy that like lives in Chicago, his car got shot up," and I just remember seeing a picture of this white car with a bullet hole in the driver's side door, and I was like, "Man, I hope this guy is okay." Like that's so crazy. Never thought twice about it. Went back to my desk and just, continued my training. And then it wasn't like Greg said until we started having the conversation, like, what do you do for a living? And, the whole thing, getting to know somebody um, in the beginning of the talking phase. And that's when, I said I worked for MetLife. He told me that, oh, I'm insured with MetLife. That's crazy. And then it was, yeah, and I had a claim. And then he's telling me this claim, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that was you. Like it was just wild. Another crazy coincidence that I always bring up is back when Genesis was in the hospital, he actually got transferred to Lurie Children's Hospital, where they essentially placed his trach. So there, across the street is this huge parking garage. I mean, it's got like what, five? Is it five levels or is it
no, it's got
four? Oh, okay. It's got quite a few levels. I think we were on level one, if I'm not mistaken.
It was one or two.
And mind you, I'm this little rural girl, Pretzel City, USA. For those of you that don't know, Freeport, I'm putting them out. I'm giving them a shout out right now. They're the home of the pretzels, literally. That was our high school mascot. A town of 26,000. So me, I'm not, really used to driving in the city. It was a big change for me, even walking in the city. And Greg can probably tell you more jokes about that later. But I pull up into the parking garage and I'm on the phone with him. I'm like, I have no idea where I'm going. I hope I parked in the right spot. And I just park. I run up in the hospital because I'm like, I got to make sure that, Jen got in there safe because they were transporting him from one hospital to this one via ambulance. So it was a crazy, crazy time. And, he's on the phone with me. And what happens? When you get there?
That was because we were trying to like him being transported there was big enough as is, right? So you were like, your emotions were, and everything was in a place where it's like I just want to get there. I want him to be okay because, like, mind you, he was connected to um, he was connected to a lot back then. So transporting him couldn't have been easy, but thank God that everything went okay. But she gets there. We had worked out this plan as to where like okay, because we weren't together at the time, not together like we weren't like in the same place at that time. So you were in Freeport and I was back home. So we were trying our best to coordinate what that was going to look like. Right, it was almost like a race against. I knew that he was going to get there and you were going to get there before me. So I remember her just kind of, because Chicago can be it can be a pretty intimidating place, right? Especially once you get closer to the downtown area. There's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of people, things are moving kind of quickly, and if you're not used to that environment, then it can like kind of just swallow you, right? And it can just create a lot of anxiety, especially for people that don't like driving in like crowded areas. Because if you're not people, they don't care if you're from there or not, right? They drive these streets all the time, so they're like, you get out of the way. Like, what do you? You're in the way. If you don't know how to drive, then get off the road, right? They don't. They don't. It's kind of just that city feel. So, I could understand why you would feel like that, right? You're not used to, or you weren't used to
Right.
to something like that. So, and even for me, sometimes it can be a lot, right? But just a little more used to it, I guess. So she gets there. Jen gets there fine. She gets there fine. I'm kind of late to the party, so I'm the last one to arrive. Not really knowing, I don't want to say not knowing what's happening, but not knowing what to expect, right? Like, okay, well, um, what's the situation really, as far as like how to get there and what room he's in, or like how's the setup, things like that. So I get to the parking garage and I find uh, I knew what her car was before. Obviously, we had been kind of moving around before that, so I knew the make and model, the color of her car fairly well. So I get to the parking garage and I get up to it. It had to have been, I want to say, level 1 or 2. I want to say 2
I
because
think it was
rarely do
too.
you ever find parking on the first level at
Mm-hmm.
that hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you're like really really lucky, at the time we didn't have any type of handicap card or placard or anything like that. So
Right.
um, I get there and I find a parking spot, and I didn't realize at first, but I conveniently find a parking spot right next to, there was an open spot right next to her car, and I was like, that's kind of crazy. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that it was just one of those things that made it easy on us because our cars are right next to each other, and it just at the time there was a lot going on with Jen, and it was just one of those things that we look back on like, wow, that was something that helped us and made us, like a um, like a sign almost to
Mm-hmm.
us that we were where we needed to be at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely a crazy story. The rest of that day is definitely a blur.
Yeah.
Honestly, for me, there was um, a lot going on, and I'm just thankful that we were able to, kind of get through, get there, and get him there, and get
Mm-hmm.
set up in the right way. So, but yeah, that definitely one of those stories where I'm like, wow, her car
It's right there.
is right here, and and it wasn't like we were, like I said, if anybody that's been to a hospital or a children's hospital or any type of facility like that where there's this big parking structure garage, it can be hard to.
Mm-hmm.
I've never found parking. I don't think I've ever found parking so easily in that garage, let alone right next to someone that you know that I know. So
Mm-hmm.
it was just one of those things that kind of one of those funny stories, I guess,
Yeah.
that we just talk about.
And then like kicking it off, like once we actually got there, so as I mentioned, his medical diagnoses. Actually, I didn't mention this. Genesis, again, born at 23 weeks, 1 pound 8 ounces, as a result of a placental abruption. So right away he was intubated. Um, right after I delivered via cesarean, it was an emergency surgery that I had to have. He stayed intubated up until about 5 months, and or no, 6 months. And then after 6 months, he was given a trach at Lurie Children's Hospital. Um, they threw a lot of medical terminology at me in the beginning prior to me knowing Greg, so I kind of knew a little bit of what things were because I kept a notebook with me, and I just wanted to be educated. I wanted to know, I wanted to learn. And I actually felt quite proud when we got to Lurie's because they asked me if I was a NICU nurse. And I was like, no, I'm just a mom that wants to know what's going on with her son. And so Greg, coming into this, he had to learn, he had to adapt. And my hat goes off to him because, I mean, they were just throwing like terms at him, and it was crazy.
I was just there, like I said, that very first day was a blur for sure. But I was like, okay. When I got to the room that he was in, the first room that he was in, because they moved him around
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. So that very first room that he was in, and just seeing him, and it's just crazy, just how small he was even back then. But I was like, wow. And then I think on that same day is when I held him for the first time. But yeah, I was even scared to do that because I didn't want to like pull a cord the wrong way. I didn't want to like disconnect him from anything or like hold his head the wrong way. it was, it was. So I could imagine if I had a picture from that moment, I'd probably look awkward. The most awkward is you could probably look holding a child because I just didn't want to. I was just trying to be careful. Didn't want to really mess anything up, and it was my first time holding him. Right, and his mom is like right there, like you better not drop him. Right.
I actually do have a picture
So
from that day.
And then there's people coming in and out of the room, and all these different things. So I had no idea what um, anything they were talking about. Obviously, rightfully so. But I think, like you said, as time went on and just being there and just learning the different medical phrases and all the things that are specific to him. So yeah, it was definitely an experience.
And during that time, speaking of like medical stuff, we had to get hands-on training. So once they placed the trach, we're like, okay, he's got a trach. But no, like there's so much that comes with having a trach. For anyone really, not even just a child or infant, but adults, get them sometimes later on in life. And they can be the result or placement of a multitude of things. You could be born with bronchopulmonary dysplasia like Jen, a chronic lung disease. You could have a car accident. Uh, anything going on with your actual trachea or airway to where you would need a trach, and really what it is an artificial airway. For those of you that don't know what it is, that is the, I guess, layman's term for it. uh, so during that time we had to get a lot of hands-on training. So there's actual ties that go behind the trach. So the trach is right here in they cut a hole in your neck. It's called the stoma, and that's where the trach goes. And there's ties that go um, behind it. And so every day we have to clean, around the stoma, around the sides of his neck, and we have to replace those ties every single day. Because if you don't, it smells horrible. And the bigger kids get, they're sweaty. It's just gross. They're drooling, all those things, and it's an open wound. So you want to keep it clean. You want to keep it sterile, and then for us, I know a lot of parents are different, but every 2 weeks we do a trach change, and we basically take out the current trach that's in his neck and we put a new one in. That's every 2 weeks. So we were doing that in the hospital. We had to come in there. They had this big old clipboard, and it had all these steps on how to change the trach or how to clean it. And we had to check off day by day what day we did it, whether it was morning or night. And they were tallying this up, like how many times we were doing it. I would say the trach ties were probably the easiest out of everything that we did for me. I think that was like the easiest. The trach changes were like the most nerve wracking because you are securing a very collapsed airway for Genesis. So you have to get it, in as soon as possible. And that was like scary. Um, So from there, after doing all that training, we're getting acclimated with, I guess, the trait culture, the people, that also had kids with trachs. I met a couple moms actually inside of the Ronald McDonald House, exchanged some phone numbers with them. I essentially joined this group called Moms and Babies with Trachs on Facebook. I think that was like a blessing for me because just walking into that community really helped me understand like what I was getting into, and also giving me the tools to realize that I wasn't alone. Because when you're going through something so traumatic like that, especially for the two of us, and me being a first time mom, never having a child prior to this, it was a lot. And so to know that there's other parents out there that are on this journey, that you can vent to, you can cry to, you can ask, you know, parenting advice, medical advice. It was amazing, and shout out to that group. I love the moms in there. I will forever have a special place in my heart for you guys. Whenever I don't know something or I have a question, I'm right on the Moms and Babies with Trach group like crazy.
Yeah, it was though that group was definitely helpful, and then just like going back into like the beginning of our relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? It started in a way was that may seem untraditional to most people. So as all of these things are going on, and you're trying to balance your own mental health, on top of what your child is going through, and then talking to doctors and trying to get set up at Ronald McDonald, and doing all these things, keeping in touch with friends, family, and then um, trying to maintain a healthy relationship with one another at a time where life was just very hectic, and
Mm-hmm.
little did we know it was just the beginning. So I think that we were very headstrong, but a lot of challenges, and I think we made it. We catered that journey to like ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we knew that there were other people that were going through similar situations, and but at the time, you're right that um, a lot of that information isn't really provided, right? Because in
Mm-hmm.
the beginning, you like something like that happens, you feel alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
You feel like, okay, this is not something that anyone is going to be able to relate to. So finding that comfort and knowing that there's a community out there that, of people that have gone through similar things is very helpful. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I mean, we tried to make it fun along the way too. Like we were in Chicago. There were a lot of things around us. Ronald McDonald was a very interesting experience. We're very thankful for them. a lot of people there were like, we gave people nicknames, right?
No, you gave them
Like
nicknames.
there was a lot of like it was a lot of stuff to like keep up with, like just
Oh
certain
man,
things. And you're like, okay, like I think I remember some of their names, but I'm not gonna say anybody's name on here. But I think that
I
we
remember
tried to make it fun. There was one guy that I think I nicknamed him Michael Jackson, just because of how soft how
his
soft
voice
his voice
was
was. And I forget what floor we were on um, in Ronald McDonald, but there
16th.
was okay, there was so much that happened where it's like, okay, well, we know that this journey is going to be a hard one. It's going to be a battle that we got to fight, but we still have to try to keep it light, as hard as that may
Mm-hmm.
be. And it was challenging too, but we do have a lot of moments where just just trying to have fun, going out and doing certain things, trying different food,
Mm-hmm.
going to the beach or whatever the case may be. And our people at that Ronald McDonald House that we were staying in, we're very thankful for them too,
Mm-hmm.
because they made it they made it fun too for us. And when we got there, it was like she said, the height of COVID, so they had this big kitchen um, on the lower floor. And here we are. We're coming into the Ronald McDonald House with all this supplies, and all these things, and they're
Pots and
bringing all this
pans,
food,
thinking
and
we're gonna eat.
right, because they have this kitchen, and then when we get there, we find out that nope, kitchen's closed. Right, nobody's cooking here ever again. Pretty much
Yeah.
is what they said. So, and
Oh
we
my god.
understood, right, but we were still mad because we're like, okay, we can clean up after ourselves, and we
Hmm.
can make sure that we scrub everything down, and but like
Nah.
COVID was such a it just took over the world, as we all know at that point, and it was a blow to us because we had to. There was a lot of stuff we had to throw away in the long run because I think we had ground beef. We were trying to plan out meals. We were like, yo, they have a kitchen there. We can cook this meal, cook this meal, cook this meal,
Hmm.
and we're like, when we get there, they're like, nope, you can't cook, so you might as well go give it to somebody else.
Yeah, I
So
think what happened was they had told me on the phone, and I think the person I was talking to may not have had all the information because they were like, "Yeah, we got a kitchen." I'm like, "Okay, we're good, we're straight," you know. So Greg, when he pulled up, that was one thing we left out. When he pulled up his car next to mine, coincidentally, um, he opened up the trunk and there's just all these pots
yeah,
and
we brought all
pans,
this
like
food.
literally our whole lives, and like we were ready to go. And I think it was funny. So that's when I think I had my friend Aniqua. She had came down, and I love her to death, man. She was there from day one, and I have a friend Shirley that was there from day one as well. Both coworkers actually. And I met them through my job, and they just stepped up to the plate on this journey, and I love them dearly for that. But this was one weekend, and Nika had came down. I think it was her birthday weekend, and
Yeah,
she had came down before for the 4th of July, and we went on a ferry ride, and she was just so supportive throughout that time because, like Greg said, you know, it's just a time of uncertainty. You don't really know what's going on. Um, every single day, everything every day is new, you know what I mean? So you don't really know what to expect. Anything can happen at any given time, so you just have to live it to the fullest. So she came down to just kind of lighten the load, and we went on a ferry ride on the 4th of July. Had a blast. They still didn't do the fireworks show that they normally would do because, again, it was at the height of COVID. But we went to this place called Elephant and Castle. Aniko and I did, and we met the best server. JJ, I'm putting you on the map right now. I don't even know if he's still there, but I mean, this guy was just, I think we were like one of the last group of people to show up at the restaurant because it was busier than all get out. I mean, there were so many people there. They were still at the door, and he's just like running back and forth. And we sat outside. I'm like, man, it's gonna be busy. But I mean, we had so much fun. It was such a good night, just celebrating her birthday. And I was like, I have to come back here. This guy rocked it with the crazy night that it was, and the service was just great. So then I told Greg about it, and it's on Wabash Street in downtown. There's actually two locations, but this one's closer to Nutella. I think Nutella is like a couple blocks behind it.
it's right off of Michigan Avenue,
Yeah.
so near closer to I don't know the exact address, but closer to Millennium Station. I know that for a
Mhm.
fact.
Because there's a train that like
Yeah,
is up above.
there's a
Yeah.
train over there. Well, there's a few trains that
There's
run
a lot of
through,
trains.
but yeah, it's closer to that side, and we went there. I don't even know how many times we went
Hundreds.
there. So we went there a few times, and good service, all the time, and we'd probably go back there again if if we were to ever be on that side of
Hmm.
downtown again. So a lot of good food. I think I forget the calamari
Oh my
is really
gosh.
good,
Yeah. Yeah.
and their wings are pretty. Well, I hope there's because I know how sometimes things change, but from what I can remember, that
Hmm.
was one of our spots, right?
Hmm.
Just talking about the journey, like one of those spots that I think we hold kind of close because it was, a place that we were able to go and get good food. Like we're in the hospital, we, or working at the end of a work day or whatever. Like, okay, let's go get some Elephant and Castle or
Hmm.
something, like get some food and just try to have a good time. But there were a lot of places a lot of places like that we went to.
Mm-hmm.
Food and just walking around. I think it was like it helped us a lot.
Geno's was another place that was like right next door to the hospital.
Yeah.
They had the best wings, best deep dish pizza that I've ever had in my life, and I just loved their service and just making those connections. And you know, they didn't know that we were not originally from the downtown area or anything like that, but just the service that we got from a lot of those people was just something that you can't forget. And like Greg said, living a life like this and having so much on your plate, it was just nice to be able to take those little night strolls. Another thing that I liked a lot about the hospital is even though our Ronald McDonald House wasn't far away from the hospital, it was still quite a walk, and it was cold. When we were there, some nights, it could get pretty cold at night, especially once it started to hit fall. They had like a free Uber service, so you would call this dispatch line and you would call up your Uber, and they would, it was all complimentary from the hospital, and it was so cool. And you'd have like the app or whatever on your phone, and it would tell you who your driver was. And I can't forget her name, and I think this is probably one of my biggest regrets before leaving was linking up with her. She was one of the dispatchers. I was supposed to get her name, but she was out of Minnesota. So if you're watching this right now, I would love to connect with you all these years later because you were the bomb.com, and we used to just, yeah, she did. We used to cut up on the phone like every time. I want to say her name was Tasha. I can't remember, but don't quote me. I know it started with a T.
Like it was a T or
yeah,
something like
but she was so cool. So anyways, going through that journey, it was a lot. And then, like I said, we had that checklist we had to do every day. And we're getting all these medical terms thrown at us. Jen is getting other surgeries. He's getting a G tube in his stomach because that's going to help with his feedings. He has a swallow study done while he's there because again there's all this swelling and he's at risk for aspirating and things like that, but he passed everything with flying colors. He was able to come home with a bottle, and the only time he didn't use or wasn't eating by mouth was during his midnight and 4 a.m. feeds, which are midnight and 4 a.m. feeds.
He was sleeping.
Yeah, because he was sleeping, and it was a wonderful thing. One of our nurses that I actually had before we got to Chicago was my favorite nurse of all time. She was a night nurse, and I cried. I remember leaving Rockford. I was like, when am I ever going to see you again? And I made a post that we were going to need at home nursing, and lo and behold, here she comes, and she's like, I want to work for you guys. And I hold her near and dear to my heart. She's like a mom to me. I mean, she's been there in so many ways that I can't even count, like just for Genesis and, me and Greg, and just there. Beautiful person, beautiful soul. Love our inside jokes, everything. We had another night nurse that we acquired on the night shift that we loved as well. A day shift nurse, a few day shift nurses, a couple. Yeah, there was a few night shift nurses as well. I mean, there's so many, but I'm just highlighting, the ones that we had when we first came home. But we had to complete a 24-hour stay before we were officially discharged, and that was crazy, but we did it. He had to do a car seat test, which I think they do that. I don't know if that's traditional with moms that don't have kids with medical needs, if that is something that only medically complex children have to do. But we did have to pass the car seat test, which he did because he was ready to go. So we get home, we set up our house like a mini PICU. I mean, there's all this medical equipment, oxygen tanks, just all these things, and you walk in, you're like, wow. And we're working in shifts at that time because there were some nights where we didn't have night nursing, so we had to work in shifts. because they were still trying to get that for us. We had a lot of day coverage, and then finally we got night help, so it was nice. But just all those first, stages of life, and then like Greg said, trying to maintain a healthy relationship with one another and be each other's peace was like so important in all of this. Like, putting understanding that we're not enemies, we're in this for the long haul. Because there's days, you're not perfect, where you're not feeling the greatest, and you may, your tone may not be the best. So we had to learn how to adapt and learn how to effectively communicate with each other throughout this process. I mean, we're still doing it now, and we've come such a long way. I feel like we've grown up together almost in a way, through our mid-20s until now. I mean, he's an old man. He's going to be 31. Uh, but
I think it helped because
mm-hmm.
I think at some point we knew that we were gonna need each other to kind of get through, and it was helpful to have some of those nurses that you mentioned because it was just it was a struggle. But I think that having knowing that you have to be at your best to care for Jen is like, all right, understand that, but you also want to make sure that you're taking time out for your relationship or taking time out for your friends, family, and yourself, which it's not an easy thing to balance, right? Even for people that aren't in the lifestyle that
Mm-hmm.
we're in, right? It's like trying to find that balance in your life. It was such a struggle, and it's not a consistent balance, right? It's like some days it may be something else entirely, but it's like you have to try to have some type of level playing field and understand that you're not perfect,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like taking care of yourself as best you can because you know that that's what you need for yourself, but also what your child needs. And if you're not taking care of yourself mentally, then it'll have effects, I feel like, on the way that you treat your child,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's and they're a child, so they don't. There's a lot that they're learning, right? It's like it's easy as an adult to get frustrated and upset over things, but it's like this tiny human hasn't been here for that long, so
Mm-hmm.
you have to kind of meet them where they are and just give them the support, the help, and everything, the tools that they need. And with Jen, we knew that he was going to need a little more help than a traditional child being born would have needed. So um, we have a lot of just going back to just being in downtown Chicago for a second. It's like we did a lot for ourselves, but the food that was down there kind of got us into some really really strange eating habits. We were eating just any and I don't want to say any and everything, but we
But
were
it was a
just
lot of
having
stress eating.
a bar. We would 7-Eleven was right down the street. We were trying to find we were eating snacks on top of snacks, just anything you would think of. And we're not I'm not I'm not mad about it, but
Mm-mm.
it's just that's just what we did at that time, and it's just what was needed, I guess. Whether it was stress eating or just trying to get through the day, or we were eating a lot Starbucks.
Oh my gosh.
You would eat all the
Leave me alone.
Starbucks. We didn't really eat a lot of the hospital food. It's
Yeah.
I know hospitals get a bad rap for that, for not having good food, but you give it a try. And we didn't eat a lot of their food though. We unless we had to, right? But there
Right.
was food in the hospital that
Mm-hmm.
was like Panera Bread or
Potbellies.
Potbellies, or what was the other one?
Burrito Bowl.
Burrito
That was his
Bowl,
weakness, man.
Subway, right? A Dunkin' Donuts. We would just go and just try to grab things quick because it was right in the hospital. But the actual cafeteria food, we tried to stay away from. I think one of us may have gotten sick one time. I don't know, maybe, but we tried to stay away from the
It's
hospital
hard telling.
cafeteria food because it was just not really appealing. But we would also order. I think once we got to a certain point, we would call the phone that was in the room and get food like breakfast delivered for like Jen or ourselves. They had that, so I remember that.
Yeah, that the breakfast was pretty good. I ain't gonna lie about that. Those
But
pancakes,
everything
right?
else was kind of
Yeah,
wasn't really good.
and like he was saying, you have to meet children where they're at, and we come from a generation, where you do what you're told. You don't ask questions. That's just kind of how we grew up, and respect was a big part of both of our upbringings right now, and I think we turned out quite, fairly great. And it's different, when you have a child, you always want to be better than, what your parents were, and then you want your children to be better than what you were at the same time. So, taking some of the things that you've learned, but kind of tweaking it just a little bit, because again, you want to be better and you want to progress in that way. So a lot of the things that we're doing is just, normal. That's normal. Just being a parent is, our normal. Um, just like anyone else, we just kind of have a little cherry on top with the trach in the medical world. And I know there's plenty of parents and friends that we've met along the way that are in our shoes right now, and they hear us and they understand what we're going through. We have been blessed to know that Genesis is not going to need the trach for, the rest of his life. At some point, he may require, airway reconstructive surgery where they do go in and, they allow him to be able to breathe on his own to where they would decannulate the trach. Or he may just need more time as he continues to grow. So it's kind of two things. We're just waiting for that medical update, which is hopefully we're gonna get that soon. But this was just kind of my intro here to just introduce me, my family. Genesis is actually sleeping, and I've tried not to be too obvious. He's like literally a room away. We have his pulse ox on, and for those of you that don't know what a pulse ox is, it reads your oxygen saturation and your heart rate, and it's a little tiny thing that you put on the probe you put on your finger when you're in the doctor's office. But he has one that goes on his toe, and it's a whole big machine, and we can see the numbers to make sure that they're in the proper parameters. So some days I will catch myself just peeking over. We have a monitor, but since we're right here, we can see everything he's doing. But been trying to keep an ear out, for him, and that's just another thing that's a part of our life that most parents don't have to worry about. But I mean, it makes us stronger at the end of the day. So my hope that going forward, that this podcast can inspire you, not only just relationship wise, but being a parent, and then also the parents that are in our shoes that are going through the same thing in their medical journey. I hope that you guys just keep your heads up, continue to fight. Because there's so many things that we've had to go through and so many challenges when it comes to school. Oh my gosh, that's probably the biggest hurdle in our lives. Just trying to get them to understand that we are caregivers. He requires 24-hour care. If we're not present in his life, he are able to care for him, then he has to have a nurse with him at all times. So, and those two titles are interchangeable. So I know that there was a lot that goes on with that, and we can save that for another time in the podcast. But as I mentioned, our special guest that we're gonna have with us, hopefully. Quite soon here has got a story to tell, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of a spoiler. It's a father's journey, so we're gonna be talking about that. I don't get to hear from a lot of fathers and their journeys and their fight with their children, and and all of that. So this person is going to be speaking on that, and I hope that it can inspire other dads in this next episode that'll be coming up. But again, y'all, if or someone you know wants to be a part of Curious Conversations with Lala, and you have a topic, go ahead and send me an email to curiousconvopod@outlook.com. I do try to check my emails regularly. I mean, there's really not a lot in the Dropbox or inbox right now, just because we just started. But I'm hoping to, be a part of the community. I'm trying to put everybody on the map. Another person I wanted to give a shout out to, what did I don't know if I did already, and I apologize if I'm saying it twice. Um, my cousin Leon for making the song for the podcast. I mean, he did his big one. He's such an amazing individual. If you guys get a chance, go check out the Ville on YouTube. Check him out on Facebook, Leon Ishman. He's got some great music, great talent. He's just an amazing individual. And I'm so glad that he took a chance and took time out to create such a beautiful song. And I did throw some spoilers out there on all three platforms. I did it on Snapchat, TikTok, and Facebook. If you haven't already seen it, the song is out. I will be playing more eventually, but just wanted you guys to get a little taste of that R&B soul that caters to me and in my personality here. Again, thank you for tuning in. Greg, thank you for being a part of this. A little icebreaker, because I ain't gonna lie, I was a little nervous tonight, but I appreciate you so much, more than you know. And yeah, I think that'll do it. So if you can't be great today, try to be even greater tomorrow. Thank you for coming to the podcast, guys.